we've talked about Boyd, Dantzler, Nickerson on this show, and I want to turn this into a larger conversation about the secondary. What are the range of outcomes for this group? Because my thought is, I feel the way about this secondary the way I feel as a microcosm about Cameron Dantzler. Like, I think there's a lot of vitriol around Dantzler for the way he's played late in games, but as I pointed out, like, the plays on a play-by-play basis, he actually wasn't that bad. I think the Vikings secondary is similar, like PFF grade, 17th, I think, in 2020, 19th in 2021. The DVOA was much better on the defense than, like, the overall points allowed would suggest. Like, I think that the defense is not destined to be bad. And the secondary is not destined to be bad. I think jettisoning Breland and Alexander is addition by subtraction. Like, I do think there's plenty of upside for the secondary as well. So I'm curious what y'all's ceiling/floor is for this group.
Yeah, I think with so many young
really
players. Yeah, no, I agree. I think with so many young players, such important positions, Seen, Booth, not to mention Bynum, who I think we all agree looks really good, but he still only has, 2 games starting under his belt. There's just a huge disparity between the vets and Harrison Smith and Patrick Peterson, who've kind of seen it all, to the young, inexperienced players. So I think we'll see a lot of inconsistencies and learning moments, if you will, especially those first 5-6 weeks. We already know to expect a lot of flags and penalties from somebody like Booth, who just has to adjust to the NFL. It's only normal to expect a guy like Lewis Seen to maybe get lost once in a while, miss some assignments here or there. But I still think the talent is all there to be a top 12 to 15 secondary easily. I think a lot of it will ultimately fall on just how much they can count on Dantzler out on that island at times. How much is he going to progress this year and develop? And then how effective the pass rush is going to be too, obviously matters a lot. But it might take them a month or two, the secondary specifically I'm talking about, might take them a month or two to really get their feet wet and kind of learn how to play cohesively as a unit.
Yeah, it's going to be volatile, I think, because everybody's learning something new. You're never going to be great at something the first day you do it. And I think we just need to kind of understand that, like, this defense is going to have more potential than what we're going to see right away. Like, they are going to play below what I think their eventual ceiling will be because they're learning, they're getting stuff down. And I think about Cameron Dantzler specifically and, like, okay, what was the problem with Cameron Dantzler last year? It was a lot of mental stuff. It was a lot of busting coverages. It was a lot of misreads. And I thought he was a lot better at, like, the physical part of the game, actually mirroring technique and all that stuff. And I think this scheme, I've been saying it all offseason, this Donatel Fangio style scheme is a better fit for him because I think it is going to demand a little bit more pure man coverage without having to say, and then also read and also banjo and inside outside and all that stuff that Zimmer had him trying to learn that he would then mess up, bust a coverage, someone streaking free open downfield or put the safety in a bad position. And now it looks like the safety made a bad play. A lot of that stuff was on Dantzler. And I think it just fits his skill set a little bit better. And so I wasn't too surprised to hear, oh yeah, he looks really great in camp. Because also in camp, individuals and stuff is also going to be an environment where a lot of the other variables are stripped away and it's just mano-a-mano. That is where Cam Dantzler is at his best. And I think the Vikings would be wise to keep him in that in that kind of simplified world. But all of that said, there's a lot to learn. There's, a lot of stuff to get down and get comfortable with. And Aaron Rodgers is first. Like, I'm sorry, he's hanging 40 on you on your first day playing in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Deja vu to 2020. I mean, I think you make a good point, Luke, is that there are going to be growing pains. And that was used frequently as an excuse early last year with a lot of the breakdowns. They talked about how they weren't used to each other. They blamed, the breakdown at Cincinnati with Jamar Chase getting by Breland, I think, and then the Rondale Moore breakdown in the Arizona game. They pointed to their lack of cohesion a lot, and now they're switching schemes. Like, even the guys that were here have to learn a new scheme. So it does feel like that could be all too convenient of an excuse for this secondary to struggle early in the season. Arif, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, but I do think that there's a difference between, this group and the 2020 group and the 2021 group, and especially the 2020 group, because, I remember, a lot of us asking Zimmer about, whether or not the 2020 group needed some additional help because they were all very young. You brought in a bunch of new people. First time you don't have continuity, and he kind of denied that was going to be a thing. And of course, it ended up being a big problem. And of course, in 2021, that continued itself, although you brought in a little bit more of a veteran presence. I think that when you take a look at it from the perspective of comparisons to them, I think that the secondary as a whole is just better, right? It's not necessarily more experience because you do have those two rookie corners, but there's going to be more experience starting for you, and that experience is, I think, going to make a pretty big difference. So I'd say for me, the floor for the secondary overall is probably 20th, maybe 21st, 22nd when you compare to other secondaries across the league. And I think the ceiling, like Luke said, it's a really volatile group. The ceiling could be up to 8th, right? They could be the 8th best secondary group by the end of the season, or top 8, right? The precision of numbers here is kind of false, but in that consideration, right? I think that there's going to be young players. It's a new scheme. They have to learn how to communicate. But I do think the scheme, although it is also a match-zone scheme, generally a little bit simpler when it comes to working with cornerbacks and their handoffs and what they need to do in terms of the rule set than the Zimmer scheme. And you've got people that they may not necessarily have been working together a lot, although the starting 4, I guess, have. You do have people that just have more experience overall. So as you rotate in someone like an Andrew Booth or a Lewis Seen, that might change a little bit, and you have to bring them on board. But you don't have 2 rookies starting right away, which was the case in 2019, if I remember correctly. So Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dancer were at least slated for a ton of slaps. Yeah, 2020. Yeah. And you had to have Holton Hill get burned constantly in that first week. And I think that's just a huge difference between now and then, right? So I think that they're in a better spot from that perspective, and that gives them a floor of being better, right, as a secondary group. But that doesn't mean that they're going to hit. You would have to have some very serious Pro Bowl candidates outside of Harrison Smith for you to think that this could be a top 5 unit, right? And I don't think that they're there. But I certainly think that given the schematic changes and how they might be friendly to Patrick Peterson's current skill set, given how Cameron Dancer is playing, given kind of the fact that Cameron Bynum is up there and that they're using Harrison Smith in ways that he was being used to use for a while, and he still looks very similar to what he was. You've got a lot of potential to be a very good team. So I think there's a very wide range here, but I think that the comparisons to 2020 and 2021 are appropriate, but they come out ahead when used that way, when thinking about that comparison.
Durante Jones
I just
has
want
got
to
to be
clarify
so
myself
thrilled.
real quick.
Oh yeah,
I just want to clarify myself too. This is not like brain dead cornerback. Like, this is not like a totally not mentally anything kind of scheme. It's just, you're not asking the outside corner to like make under calls or smash calls or something, right, or like adjust the play in the middle, or at least not as often, unless you're on like the quarter side of a cover 6 or something like that. Whereas Zimmer lived there every single play. And so you constantly had to understand the entirety of what was going on in the defense. Yes. And in some moments, Dantzler can just say, okay, I got you, you got me. And I'm just going to play. I can play whatever leverage I want. I can play whatever technique I want. I'm just going to do what I think is best. And I think that's a better place for him. Like, it's better for him to investigate and study one thing, one guy, and hone in on it than have to try to holistically understand everything. I think that just fits the way that he plays better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's fair because I didn't want to get across that it's a simple scheme. It's still a scheme that requires a lot of cornerbacks, but when compared to what Zimmer was demanding of cornerbacks, which, like you said, they have to know the whole defense. This is why he wanted to throw people in a nickel corner, because it forced you to learn more of the defense. It gives you a little bit more freedom of play in terms of the fact that you are playing, right? It's the decision trees are going to be there in terms of what you have to do. The decision tree is pared down a little bit, and also which decision tree you're using, and that I think was one of the bigger issues when onboarding new corners in the Zimmer scheme, is that you go from one play to one motion, and now your decision tree has changed to a whole new decision tree, to a whole new. It's a bunch of if-then statements kind of like layered on top of each other. It made it very difficult for people to get on board. It's still a scheme that has a degree of complexity, and I imagine it'll grow complex again as time goes on, because I don't think that this is going to be, given how young the group is, the final version of that defense in terms of its complexity. But I do think that there's just kind of less in terms of how much you have to instantly absorb in order for you to be a successful cornerback in the scheme, for sure.